executed them in front of the house. And this are boys, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and probably like a 7-year-old, 6-year-old, and everyone, is pretty much drawing the same narratives, that maybe he hated the mom, he had issues with his wife, and that's why he did it. But I don't know. You can say mental health issues, but it doesn't stop you from going to jail for a very, very long time, if not forever, or the electric chair.
Right. In this case, the kids were 10 and 2, and neighbors are saying that it would seem that there's a case of infidelity in the marriage. It honestly doesn't make sense to me. If you have an issue with your partner, don't extend it to the children. If you don't want them anymore, give them up for adoption.
It's heartbreaking.
It's very heartbreaking. Still on the front page, blow to integrity. Bill wants graft convicts allowed to hold public office. Interesting. I think that's there's one more story here. Kenya's complaint. Senators probe graft claims and passport issuance at immigration on page 6. That's all that we can take from the Star in Kenya. Let's move away from the east of the continent.
All right, to South Africa now on the Sowetan this morning. Very few stories. It says here, N3 upgrades. Fraud accused firm bags 4.7 billion rand tender. Sanral Defense awarding contract to a joint venture involving a company whose directors face criminal charges for allegedly defrauding the KwaZulu-Natal government. Also, road agency says there is no law prohibiting it from doing business with the company as there is no conviction. Page 4 on the Sowetan this morning. A few others this morning. Kosi Nation not happy as Chiefs opt for Nseki. That's in sports. And Oskido all about passing the baton now. I follow him on Instagram. Pretty interesting, character there. There's a legend of South African music. These are the very few stories on the Sowetan this morning. Let's go to Nigeria and see what's on the Punch.
All right, here on the Punch newspaper, we have Sallah, current pains necessary, says Tinubu, governors preach unity. Yesterday, what we saw, all right, we'll come back to the Punch newspaper, and it's interesting because that big headline of the Punch is interestingly, in a way, maybe contradicting the one on the Nation that says, Idil Kabiru, our challenges are surmountable. Well, this was a paper from yesterday. We'll take another paper, to explain that. But it's interesting, that the front page of the Punch newspaper talks about current pains necessary. Anyway, we're going to look into this conversation, shortly, because people would usually ask that why is it necessary? Who is it necessary for? At the end of the day, must we always be the one to bear the brunt? Anyway, let's look at the front page of the Daily Trust. Stakeholders to Tinubu. Hasty economic reforms worsening poverty. Reforms could push 7.1 million Nigerians into poverty by year end, according to World Bank. Only sequential execution will impact positively on people. It is important that reforms are not forced, according to Professor Waleke. PDP cautions APC and federal government over anti-people policies. Still on the front page, Eid, Tinubu royal fathers, imams harp on unity and patriotism. We love our country, but does our country love us? Drama as APC and PDP chieftains clash over sitting arrangements at Osun Eid ground. 3 arrested for killing naval rating in Ondo. Students free 6 inmates at Suleja Custodial Center. Students freed 6 inmates. How did they get access? Weren't there security people? Right, I don't know.
But if you remember last year, there was an attack on one of the prisons,
yes,
which also led to.
Yes.
And the Nigerian government till date has not been able to assure Nigerians that every one of those prisoners has been rearrested.
Of course they have.
The same thing happened in Edo State. If you remember during the, I think it was during the NSAS protest or so, there was also a prison break where, about 1,000 prisoners ran away, escaped. Till date, there hasn't been any assurance or, update on that story. That
They're probably
says that
working in some offices now. They've gotten jobs, Michael Schofield made it to Lagos, or made it to Nigeria.
Not necessarily, but it's the responsibility of the Nigerian government to ensure that, these people are rearrested. And also to let the Nigerian people know that these people have been rearrested. But when a story just dies like that,
Yeah, as usual. Another argument would be how effective our prison reform system, putting them in prison, does it really get the reform, does it get the effect that prisons were quote unquote set for? Exactly. So at the top of the paper, we have federal government stops funding of professional bodies and councils. Despite outcry over JAMB cut-off marks, data shows 140 plus among lowest. And the final story this morning, how Sokoto famous butcher was killed over alleged blasphemy. This is a story that's been making the front pages. Very, very sad story there.
All right.
Now let's head over to the Punch.
Yeah, a frightening story on the top right corner, left of the Punch this morning. which is one that I have been speaking about, and I said that right after we're done with the mirage of buying petrol at 500 naira, 490 naira here in Lagos, that we eventually will get to see the reality of the petrol price from the 1st of July, if subsidy truly ends. And so if you look at the top left corner, it says the marketers project 700 naira per litre petrol. And this might be the reality for a lot of Nigerians. So if you think that Nigerians are frustrated at this point, wait till the month of July, just a couple of days away.
I think
actually.
it's a good idea for me after the show to go and stock up on fuel first.
Yes, and electricity units also.
No, but you know what? Why the electricity units on may not work? Because regardless of how much, even if I buy 50,000 naira electricity or 100,000,
yeah, but
they will change how they're charging. So it just means it will run faster. So it's from them.
Okay, but I'm gonna probably have to think through that. I don't know. All right, Sallah, current pains necessary, says Tinubu. Governors preach unity. President assures Nigerians of better days. PDP lambast APC. Governors demand peaceful coexistence as Muslims celebrate Sallah. And the question Nigerians are asking is, the current pains that are necessary, is it just for Nigerians, or the politicians and the people in government, do they also get to suffer these current pains? And another thing is, isn't there any other way around it? Because I know that over time I've continuously said that there must be ways with which we can save more money in Nigeria. There must be ways we can cut down on government spending. There must be ways that we can plug leakages in government. In the different MDAs across the federation, that funds just keep going missing.
But do they really want to do that?
Exactly, and so if we do not tighten up those places where funds keep going missing, then we will continue to tax Nigerian citizens and let Nigerian citizens bear the brunt of these policies. How many more new taxes are coming up in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months with the new administration? Because that's what the administration is known for, in the time that he was Lagos State Governor. So we'll see, and once again, these are the questions that Nigerians will ask of the current administration. Nigeria's digital infrastructure inadequate for cashless economy, says the World Bank. And also, drama as Senate spokesman Adeleke and supporters clash at Eid ground. It was pretty interesting yesterday. Ladoja rejects Makinde's planned elevation of high chiefs, and also community groans over bad roads, seeks Abiodun's intervention. You can also see a picture of the current Nigerian president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, along with former Lagos State Governor Babajide Fashola. We can also see his chief of staff there, Femi Gbajabiamila, and a few others, Nuhu Ribadu, the NSA, and the Lagos State Deputy Governor, Hamzat, all in that picture with a few other faces, some of them familiar. These are the stories that we can share this time on the newspapers. We have more newspapers coming your way, as always, in the second half of Breakfast Central. Remember, also, you can through TV, let us know your thoughts on any of these stories. If any of them excite you, from Kenya to South Africa to Nigeria, let us know your thoughts. We'll be eager to share them on television. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break, moving into our top stories.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
You wake up to a lot of stories about Africa.
But this is where you get the story straight.
Where we explore different angles because we understand our stories.
There's that passion when it's your perspective and not a distant perception.
I know you hear it a lot, but it's true. Nobody can tell your story better than you.
That's what we do.
All day, every day,
On News Central TV.
are African stories by Africans for Africans.
Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now, just over 3 years after the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, a new report shows how the pandemic deepened existing inequalities in South Africa and overlooked the needs of young people in the country. The report is the impact of COVID-19 on education, food and play, leisure, and of course related adaptations for children and young people, looking at these issues in South Africa and the UK.
It was done by a team of researchers from South Africa, the UK, and Brazil who wanted to conduct a study on the impact of COVID-19 on children and young people, particularly those from disadvantaged households. Now, still talking about this, we see that one of the key findings of the report is that young people's voices and needs were not considered in policy decisions, resulting in their long-term losses.
You recall that South Africa was one of the countries hardest hit by COVID-19, and the study also revealed that due to social isolation and economic disruption caused by lockdowns, children and young people's education has been stunted and their access to nutritious food has also been reduced. Now, joining us to discuss this further is Professor Lochner Marias, is the University of Free State Center for Development Support. He's one of the lead researchers on the report. Good morning, Professor. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's been more than a year since COVID died down. Why did you think that it was important to still do this research? Was there any specific reasons behind it?
Yeah, I think the main reason has been that when COVID broke out, the concerns were about the lives of people and mainly adult people. So children were less affected by the COVID pandemic in terms of getting sick and dying. So the challenge was to say, okay, are there long-term implications of COVID on children? They were not thought of as at risk during COVID, but in the long term, our study shows severe pressures and risks to children.
All right, let's talk about these findings, Professor. One of the major findings would be that young people's voices and needs were not considered. Would you maybe share with us if there were some other findings that this report presents?
Yeah, I think the report makes findings about the relationship between three things. So one is learning, the other is access to food, and the other is play or leisure. So what we need to understand is how these things are interacted and how COVID affected them. So the first part of the problem is that we lost several days or a large number of days on learning. So typically across the world in a 2-year period, we lost about 740 days of learning. In South Africa, the formal numbers are a little bit less, yet the problem is that often learning was lost because students went to school only every second week. So effectively, if you look at this, we've lost about half the time of learning over a 2-year period, and that's a big problem. Together with that, the issue is that that many schools have been places where children did receive food. So globally, the estimates are that about 39 billion meals have been lost. And in South Africa, this was a